Hello, David Darko. In this video, we're gonna analyze Bihan again. This time, I'll be using his characterization in Mortal Kombat 1 to try to parse his actions and motivations. Although the writing in this game is questionable at best, I believe we have sufficient information to string together a coherent analysis. Bihan, although viscerally comically evil, is actually quite deep and complex. His character represents the volatile nature of real-life personalities and signifies someone who has an unyielding commitment to interpersonal regression. Through this analysis, I'll use Liu Kang's new era along with some inferencing to illuminate how Bihan systematically becomes the worst version of himself. Bihan does this by exacerbating his insecurities, being interpersonally ineffective, divorcing himself from reality, and letting his low self-esteem culminate in the worst way possible. Timeline. Bihan, throughout the story, has a few notable chapters. At the beginning, he aids in Liu Kang's recruitment of Earthrealm's warriors for the Mortal Kombat tournament. After Earthrealm wins in said tournament, Bihan, Kuai-Liang, and Tomas were tasked to go on a covert mission to destroy the Soul Stealers and capture Shang Tsung. On this mission, Bihan and Kuai-Liang are captured, but instead of being executed, Shang Tsung preys on Bihan's dissatisfaction with the Lin Kuei's relegation to Earthrealm's defense, and highlights their mutual resentment towards Liu Kang. Bihan, in one swift act, betrays Earthrealm, his brothers, and Outworld, and joins Shang Tsung. Bihan then confesses to Kuai-Liang that he let their father die, which spurs Kuai-Liang into a homicidal rage that marks the start of the Subzero Scorpion rivalry. And although Kuai-Liang, Tomas, and an unconscious Bihan go off together, it is implied that they find a way to part ways. Now, the timeline is a little nebulous here, so these events may not have occurred in this exact order, but essentially what happens is Bihan helps General Shao, who was in prison for conspiring against Outworld with Shang Tsung, by helping him escape. Bihan is then betrayed by Shao.
I owe you nothing, Bihan. You would still be in prison were it not for me.
Regarding the Lin Kuei's recent defectors, Bihan lies to his clan, telling everyone that Kuai-Liang and Tomas had turned their backs on the Lin Kuei.
I still cannot believe that Liu Kang capitulated to Outworld, that he agreed to break up our clan.
He was spineless, as was Kuai-Liang for abiding his surrender.
They gave up on the Lin Kuei, but we will not.
Already she suspects our deception. Eventually she will learn the truth about Kuai-Liang.
We will be ready when she does.
Bihan uses this false narrative to get the Lin Kuei on board to attack Kuai-Liang's wedding. He succeeds for a moment and reveals to Cyrax that he lied after Kuai-Liang gave his version of events.
You know Bihan is wrong, that he acts without honor.
No, it is Kuai-Liang who's betrayed the Lin Kuei.
That is a lie. Spoken by the man who let my father perish.
What?
So impatient to lead, to make the Lin Kuei his. My brother went even further. He broke his sacred oath and sided with outsiders against Earthrealm.
No, that is impossible.
Did I have this when last we saw each other? Who do you think is responsible?
Grandmaster, is this true?
Every word.
You knew about this, didn't you?
I share his vision for the Lin Kuei. We won't be bound by Liu Kang's limits.
Breaking our traditions, our vows, I won't stand for it.
Which is why we kept you from the truth.
Now that you know, you are a threat to the Lin Kuei.
Cyrax then betrays Bihan, defeating him in Sektor, his sycophantic lover, with Kuai-Liang by her side. He's then extradited to Outworld for his crimes against the realms, and is on the verge of being sentenced to execution due to his aid in Shao's rebellion. Liu Kang attempts to vouch for a more peaceful option when they're gratuitously attacked by Havik and other characters from Chaos Realm. Havik abducts Geras and bests Outworld's and Earthrealm's warriors. Bihan, not yet done, slides into the closing portal to Chaos Realm, where he is quickly overwhelmed, tortured, and eventually killed. He's resurrected as Noob Saibot, an agent of Chaos, crafted by Titan Havik. Earthrealm's warriors and some of Chaos Realm's rejects saves Bihan and takes him home where he is magically restored, though relegated to his new physical form. While explaining Havoc's plot to bring chaos to all realms to Liu Kang, they're attacked by Havoc and others from Chaos Realm. With his new powers, Bihan destroys every foe that comes in his way and defeats Titan Havoc, thus saving Liu Kang's timeline. He gets too cocky, however, and challenges Liu Kang, which ends with him in a tomb within the Temple of the Elements, where he will be restored. Sektor breaks him out prematurely, and then it is implied that Bihan plans on terrorizing the realms via the Lin Kuei.
I found Bihan. As I rescued Bihan, all thought of retrieving Quan Chi's treasure was quickly forgotten. I couldn't leave you locked away in the temple.
You were right to be impatient.
Titan Havoc gave me these gifts to use in fomenting his chaos. Instead, I will use them to fight for the Lin Kuei. Liu Kang, the Shaolin, my brother, and his clan will yield in terror when confronted by my perfection.
Analysis. To start, there are two concepts that are paramount to understanding Bihan's character. The first concept needed to understand Bihan's character is insecurity. Insecurity is generally defined as a feeling of inadequacy / lack of confidence. There's a lot of different flavors of insecurity, but Bihan's insecurity revolves around his inability to live up to his father's expectations. Being the firstborn child and next in line to be the Grand Master, Bihan likely had incredibly harsh training relative to that of his brothers, and even harsher expectations on him from everyone for his entire life. That kind of pressure can breed resentment towards others, and even self-hatred towards oneself for not being able to live up precisely to set imposed expectations. Additionally, Kuai-Liang and Tomas likely got to experience a warmer, more lackadaisical side of their father due to them being younger. Younger siblings often get more leeway and less responsibility, making their upbringing less stressful when compared to that of an older sibling like Bihan. Kuai-Liang was likely raised similarly to Bihan, but with less expectation, which would not only allow him to largely be unburdened by the insecurities that Bihan had to face, but also give him more opportunity to relate to his peers and socialize accordingly. As for Tomas, it's implied that he is the youngest sibling, so not only does he likely have the least responsibility of the three, but due to his status as an orphan, he probably was more grateful for even being there, and had a super low chance of becoming the Lin Kuei's new Grand Master, thus giving him the lowest expectations of the three brothers, making him largely unburdened. To add insult to injury, everyone appears to believe that Bihan's father was a great man.
I knew your father. He was a great man.
Yet he never understood the Lin Kuei's potential.
Which could be true, but contrasted with the harsh expectations, harsher training, and the alienation Bihan likely felt, he was essentially guaranteed to feel not only lonely, but incredibly resentful towards his father. This loneliness would have largely contributed to his blatant lack of social skills. The second concept is cognitive dissonance. It's when a person holds two views that are related, but contradict each other. It's an intensely discomforting feeling. The more important the view is, the stronger the want to resolve the dissonance. Any form of unreconciled cognitive dissonance is deeply uncomfortable and borderline unbearable. A resolution must happen for the human to function. For Bihan, all his actions are in service of reconciling his cognitive dissonance induced by his inability to reach his father's expectations. His thought process for letting his father die was likely something along the lines of, if my father dies, then I'll have this expectation be alleviated and be able to take his place without having to worry about disappointing him or him judging me. I'll become the Grand Master of the Lin Kuei and steer it into a direction I see fit. And I can get back at my father for all his harsh treatment towards me and get back at him for putting me in this highly stressful position to begin with. Overall, it was a manifestation of Bihan's proclivity towards opportunity and his relentless resentment towards his father. Ironically, Bihan's resentment would only grow even after his father's death, as he uses resentment as a weapon to reconcile his cognitive dissonance.
I don't recognize your creator's authority.
Denying facts makes them no less real.
To put things simply, the more he resents his father, the more justified he feels in his decision to let his father die, which in turn motivates him to overcompensate with his ambition, which leads him to repeating the cycle. This rationalization circle helps Bihan cope with his insecurities, and now, his act of letting his father die. Instead of starting to deal with his demons by at least acknowledging their existence, he chooses to rationalize his way into dubious justifications. Sektor. One way that Bihan systematically reconciles his cognitive dissonance is via his relationship with Sektor, Bihan's biggest glazer. She's the master armorer for the Lin Kuei, who is highly intelligent and even more so rebellious. Her mother, Madame Bo, the owner of a small food place, dedicates her life to serving others, not just in terms of food, but also in terms of Earthrealm's defense. She was tasked with training Kung Lao and Raiden for the defense of Earthrealm, which is again another act of public service. Sektor seems to be holistically antithetical to her mother in the sense that she's unempathetic and selfish to the nth degree. Her attraction to Bihan is likely spawned by their mutual desire to serve themselves, as seen in Bihan's need to cope with his insecurities and Sektor's need to validate her selfishness. One of her more notable selfish acts is how she stole Bihan from the Temple of the Elements during his recovery. Her initial mission was that of Bihans from Mortal Kombat mythologies. I detailed this journey pretty heavily in this video here, but to summarize it, Bihan, and now Sektor, was essentially tasked with stealing the map of the elements from the Shaolin Temple. In exchange for this, Quan Chi would wipe out the Shirai Ryu, a rival clan to the Lin Kuei. Upon stealing the map, Bihan was supposed to use said map to infiltrate the Temple of the Elements, defeat the 4 elementals, and give the amulet to Quan Chi. Sektor pretty much has this mission almost 1-to-1, except for when she finds Bihan. Her priorities shift. She is, in Bihan's absence, the Grand Master of the Lin Kuei.
And Sektor. Further Lin Kuei transgressions will be severely punished. As their Grand Master in Bihan's absence, you will be held responsible.
So eliminating the Shirai Ryu should be priority number 1. But she doesn't care about that, at least not as much as she cares about Bihan and his restoration. Despite her impulsivity, Bihan validates her impatience by telling her that what she did helped him keep the powers that Titan Havoc imbued him with.
Is it best for you to remain this way?
It is best for the Lin Kuei.
It is not stated whether or not these endings are canonical, but it's implied that Bihan and Sektor then go on to terrorize the realms with their relationship rekindled, thus amplifying their worst attributes and becoming the worst versions of themselves. In all previous timelines, Bihan must be corrupted to become Noob Saibot. His original self, although complicit and active with evil, has sufficient potential to redeem himself and be more moral. In this new timeline, it is stated, according to Kuai-Liang,
Your new attire suits you. It is as black as your heart.
How are you always so blind? First to the Lin Kuei's potential, now to the perfection of Lord Havoc's chaos.
It is your ambition that is blind, Bihan. As always, though he twisted your mind to his purpose, he left your desires unchanged.
that Havoc only altered Bihan's drive for chaos. His ambitions and general thought processes remain static. Bihan, in this timeline, is corrupted by Sektor. Not Quan Chi, not Havoc, but Sektor. It is implied in Kuai-Liang's ending in MK11 that Sektor's influence was a contributing factor to his corruption.
I had to redeem my brother. With the hourglass, I wound back time to our childhood. I studied every second of Bihan's life to understand why he embraced Sektor's corruption.
But in this iteration, it is shown that Sektor is the main cause of Bihan's true shifting into Noob Saibot. Now, what does this say about us as humans? This means that when we surround ourselves with people who incessantly validate everything we do,
I share his vision for the Lin Kuei. We won't be bound by Liu Kang's limits.
we exacerbate both our best and worst attributes. It inspires us with confidence that may allow us to excel in whatever goals we may want to achieve, but the level of your excellence will likely be relative to your level of failure. Now, failure in a vacuum is just a part of becoming successful, but the failure I'm referring to is a moral one which often comes with severe punishments. When applying this to Bihan, Sektor's yes-manery allowed him to unhealthily cope with letting his father die, change the purpose of the Lin Kuei whilst retaining most of its members, arm the Lin Kuei with advanced weaponry, making them a credible threat, defeat Titan Havoc, thus saving his timeline, and obtain new powers. The price he had to pay, however, for listening to such yes-manery was him losing the relationship he had with his brothers and 3 of the most powerful members of the Lin Kuei to a rival clan, harboring enemies from both Earthrealm and Outworld for his impulsive betrayal, attacking his brother's wedding, thus earning the Lin Kuei even more infamy, getting tortured and dying, and literally losing himself to darkness and chaos, thus making his chances of redemption near zero. Surrounding yourself with sycophants is an easy way to isolate yourself from reality. Again, doing so can help you to succeed, but it'll certainly divorce you from reality, alienate you from people who may actually care about you interpersonally, and compromise your moral character. Who we surround ourselves with is all we really are. It's who we invariably become and what we tend to perpetuate onto the world around us. Human memory and its unreliability. Another way that Bihan isolates himself from reality is via lies. He uses it to change past events in his mind and systematically misremembers certain things entirely. Misremembering is when we recall an event incorrectly. Typically, this involves forgetting small details of the memory, filling in the gaps with assumptions and or biases based on what we have ruminating in our minds. But this can also be done via lying to oneself. Bihan often utilizes tactical lies in the story. He lies about his inability to save his father to Kuai-Liang and Tomas. He lies to Cyrax about Kuai-Liang and Tomas's defection. He lies to himself about reality to cope with his morally dubious acts. He even lies during his combat, although that's kind of debatable. Bihan uses these lies to make himself believe that he's justified in doing terrible things. As stated before, Bihan's father is widely appreciated and perceived well.
Both your parents were excellent fighters.
I can only hope to live up to their example.
We're not given any explicit details about Bihan's upbringing, but we do know that he is the oldest of three. Using his behavior we see in MK1 story modes and the elder child syndrome theory, we can make some strong inferences about his upbringing. Some characteristics of eldest child syndrome worth noting are a strong sense of responsibility, a proclivity towards leadership roles, a tendency to have high ambition, a tendency to feel immense pressure to succeed, and a tendency to feel jealous towards younger siblings. These are very rough and general aspects of elder child syndrome and aren't precisely applicable to all or even most elder childs, but using this theory helps build a framework for us to analyze Bihan. In the story, we see Bihan taking a strong sense of responsibility over his brothers. He's always eager to explain himself to them. Rather than resorting to threats, petty remarks, or violence, although he does do that sometimes, he's typically trying to angle things in a way to include his brothers into his vision for the Lin Kuei. Only until the last moment, where Kuai-Liang and Tomas are seemingly going to defect, does he resort to violence. Bihan also has a strong proclivity towards leadership roles. Said proclivity is most evident in the fact that he literally let his father die to become the Grand Master of the Lin Kuei. Granted, that wasn't his only or even his main reason for doing so, but it was still likely a huge contributing factor. When it comes to high ambition, Bihan appears to have this as well. He wants to take this clan that has dedicated its purpose to defending Earthrealm for centuries and turn it into a governing force, or at least one that serves themselves rather than the entirety of Earthrealm.
Victory will bring us glory.
Glory? We fight for duty.
Does our father's ghost possess you? All I hear is his voice.
We must honor his vision, Bihan.
Vision is what he lacked. He was blind to our superiority. We settle for defending Earthrealm when we could help lead it.
Our clan doesn't govern. It serves.
That is our past. It won't be our future.
Part of what contributed to Bihan's swift betrayal was a drive to succeed with his goals. He's very obviously not a democratic leader. He's sensitive to criticism, often lashing out, making threats, and getting violent. He's not very willing to debate and will stop at literally nothing to have things go his way.
If we lose, it will be due to your incompetence.
Of course, you have no flaws.
Do not join combat unless I require it. We cannot risk losing this battle. Stay there. He is mine to finish. He is able, but I will take him.
What is more important, winning this fight or protecting your ego?
This time, you battle me.
No, Bihan. Your ego is too...
Havoc filled my mind with his chaos. I have learned his thoughts, learned his combat.
Bihan, stand down.
We are not safe until he dies.
We do not know how he is joined with his timeline. Destroying him could wipe it from existence. And I will not kill innocent millions.
That is not our concern. Ours is only this.
Enough! I have had my fill of your selfishness.
Liu Kang, I will not.
Bihan, no! Not this fight!
He doesn't know how to talk to people. And that's why he's disrespectful to Kung Lao, puts Tomas down, and scolds Cyrax so much. He chooses not to engage with meaningful pushback in good faith. When he does, he uses debate as a tactic to avoid combat, but rest assured, whenever debate fails, he will use authoritarian physical violence in order to enforce his way of thinking. This is why he takes such a liking to Sektor. The only way Bihan can have a close relationship in his life is if the other party acquiesces to him or just doesn't disagree with him entirely. The only reasons why Kuai-Liang and Tomas put up with him for so long is because they were brothers and they were part of the same clan. As soon as Bihan betrayed his oath, thus betraying their brotherhood, him being Grandmaster didn't matter, and he ultimately was not able to convince any of them to join his cause. He again has to resort to lies to inspire his troops. Interpersonal ineffectiveness. One of the biggest contributing factors to Bihan's regression is his interpersonal ineffectiveness. To put it shortly, he doesn't know how to talk to people. Throughout the story, his conversations are very rigid, tone-deaf, and unsavory. For example, at the beginning of the MK1 main story, Kung Lao remarks that Bihan and the rest of his Lin Kuei couldn't handle him. Bihan responds by scoffing at him and telling him that they wouldn't have survived had they actually been trying. Kung Lao is very obviously annoying and short-sighted in what he said, but Bihan is insinuating a threat to someone who he will obviously have to fight alongside with one day. Bihan sees him as above Kung Lao, which is justified given their backgrounds, but talking down to him is ineffective. It breeds opportunity for misunderstanding and resentment. Later in their interactions, when they're in the war room, Bihan remarks that Lao and Raiden would only hinder their efforts. Lao obviously takes offense to this and is ready to tell Bihan off when Kuai-Liang diffuses the situation by saying something that doesn't demean their skills.
We will leave immediately.
And we will join you.
You are not Lin Kuei. You would only hinder the effort.
Raiden and I are more than—
We're trained differently. It takes years to master our ways.
The only hurt dished out was towards egos, but had things escalated further, an unnecessary fight could have ensued. Another interaction Bihan blows out of proportion is his interaction with Johnny Cage. He could have easily just shoved him off and warned him about any other transgressions, but instead, he delivers a 4-piece combo, resulting in the breaking of Johnny Cage's Hachuli. Johnny Cage is known to be a big spender, noting that he spent $2 million plus on Sento and got divorced mainly because of the overly expensive lifestyle he lived. Acknowledging this, Bihan's rashness and insecurity put him in likely tens if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to Johnny Cage. Now, obviously, Bihan is never going to pay this debt.
You know you still owe me for that Hachuli.
You'll never see payment, Cage.
New look, old problem. You still owe me for the Hachuli.
You will not be paid.
But this is just another instance of Bihan's poor communication potentially complicating the relationship of what could have been a great future ally. You can argue that Bihan eventually betrayed these potential allies, so him being cordial was not a requirement, and I could see that argument, but the reason why this argument doesn't work is because Bihan betrayed the realms opportunistically rather than methodically. Even if he had been meticulously planning to betray the realms, it would still make more sense to treat those you encounter with compassion rather than scorn, as you could recruit these people to your cause. The third interaction he has is with Tomas. It's likely that Bihan has communicated with Tomas like this for their entire lives, but it's still a wild way to put things. Bihan is not only the eldest, something that is valued in the Lin Kuei, but he's also Grandmaster, so Smoke speaking out of turn is inappropriate. Bihan corrects Smoke not by asserting his status as Grandmaster and reminding him that he calls the shots at the end of the day, but he does it by—
Mind your place, Tomas. Father may have taken you in, made you one of us, but your blood will never be Lin Kuei.
This would only cause resentment, misunderstanding, distrust, plausible emotional instability, hatred, disdain, insecurity, fuck it, just any negative emotion imaginable. These are words you say to someone you will never speak to again. Not someone you're about to go on a life-threatening mission with. One where communication and synergy is paramount to their survival. It's no wonder why Tomas was so quick to side with Kuai-Liang and not Bihan in his ambition. Bihan's biggest interpersonal blunder, however, was with Kuai-Liang. Bihan seems to be the most patient with Kuai-Liang. He's always explaining himself to him and trying to redirect his way of thinking to that of his own. Unfortunately, Bihan is horrible at communicating and is trying to convince Kuai-Liang to go against the principles he's sworn to. The principles that his father, who he honors and respects, spent his entire life instilling into his clan and Kuai-Liang. Eventually, when Bihan realizes that explaining himself won't work, he resorts to using his status to espouse his views, expecting Kuai-Liang to get in line because of Bihan's seniority in both age and rank. In probably the worst interpersonal interaction Bihan has had to date, he confesses to Kuai-Liang that he let their father die when he had initially told him that he tried to save his life. Bihan tells him that he had to lie because Kuai-Liang was the one who couldn't handle the truth. Bihan is the one who can't handle the truth that he let his father die. He has to believe that he was a doddering old fool that doomed Lin Kuei to mediocrity. He has to believe that not saving his father and becoming Grandmaster was necessary in order to help the Lin Kuei reach its full potential. If he doesn't do this, he has to again reconcile the idea that he let his father, who was widely perceived to be a great guy, die. He has to reconcile his prodigious insecurities, and he now has to reconcile the fact that he's betraying his oath to the Lin Kuei in both realms to side with the very people he was sent to destroy. And he copes with this by projecting his insecurities onto Kuai-Liang. Kuai-Liang rejects Bihan's insecurities, and then Bihan himself by 1v100ing everyone in the room and running away. Although Bihan is the one who broke his principles, he has the gall to imply that Kuai-Liang and Tomas don't care about their oaths. He distorts the meaning of their oaths to reconcile his cognitive dissonance. In his mind, it's not him who betrayed the Lin Kuei, it's his brothers. Kuai-Liang directly calls Bihan out by saying that
we may not share blood, but we are brothers.
Do your oaths mean nothing? It's your duty to obey my will.
Not when it betrays Lin Kuei principles. We won't sacrifice them to serve your ambition.
Bihan scars his brother's face and tells him to end this disagreement and essentially join him. He seems desperate to have his brother at his side, but up to this point, Bihan has communicated by responding to Kuai-Liang's rejections in bad faith, meaning he's not willing to change his mind, he's just espousing his views relentlessly, asserting what he believes in hopes that Kuai-Liang follows suit, scarring his face, giving him a permanent mark, and fighting him, possibly being willing to kill him had he actually won the fight. His poor communication would spite Kuai-Liang and ultimately come back to severely harm Bihan's ego in the worst ways possible. Kuai-Liang, the better Bihan. Kuai-Liang is everything Bihan wishes he was. For starters, he's interpersonally effective. Throughout the story, Kuai-Liang's interpersonal effectiveness is progressively showcased more intensely in direct contrast to Bihan's blunders. The first instance is at the beginning of the story, when he stays silent despite Kung Lao's arrogant taunt, in direct contrast to Bihan's daft comment. The second instance was when he questions Bihan's outburst whenever he four-pieces Johnny Cage. He toes the line of subordination effectively by inquiring about his brother's state of mind, but respecting his answer rather than pressing further. The last instance, or at least the last one I'm using as an example, was when he resolves the conflict between Kung Lao and Bihan by rephrasing what Bihan said in a similarly true but inoffensive manner. Another way Kuai-Liang hurts Bihan's ego is by not only living up to his father's expectations, but arguably exceeding them. He chooses to defect from the Lin Kuei whenever Bihan partners with Shang Tsung and General Shao. Rather than blindly listening to his Grandmaster, he rallies his allies, some of whom were scorned by Bihan, and uses their assistance to build a new clan that would fill the void the Lin Kuei left in its transition. This way, he embodies his father's purpose to serve Earthrealm out of civic duty rather than personal glory, something which Bihan could not do. Kuai-Liang also bests Bihan by surrounding himself with people that will not only support him, but keep him in check. He has a good friend / brother who he collaborates with to help run the Shirai Ryu. Their influence is so strong, they're able to rehabilitate Takeda Takahashi, who in this universe is a ruthless hunter for the Yakuza who relishes in his lifestyle. Another close relationship that Kuai-Liang cultivates is with his wife Harumi. Harumi is like Sektor in pretty much every way. They're both goal-oriented, intelligent, tactically adroit, and strong-willed. Their main difference, however, is found in Harumi's propensity to disagree with and even stand up to Kuai-Liang. Through this disagreement, Kuai-Liang eventually learns to forgive someone who he thought to be unforgivable and recruit them to his clan. The only time Sektor really directly disagrees with Bihan is when he's about to fight Liu Kang and Sektor tries to hold him back, to no avail. It's too late. Their relationship isn't built off of disagreement, so Bihan quickly shoves Sektor off and proceeds to get himself frozen and coffined. Ironically, Bihan had a Harumi and Kuai-Liang, but every time he tried to interject or give him helpful feedback, he too would be brushed off and disregarded, similarly to Sektor. Bihan's insecurities don't allow for any Harumis to exist in his world. He systematically ensures that he stays in denial, divorced from reality. Finally, there's combat. Bihan is constantly wanting to prove himself and relish in any opportunity he gets to engage in combat. Kuai-Liang, on the other hand, seems to view combat as just a part of his job rather than an avenue for personal fulfillment. He has nothing to prove. Ironically, Kuai-Liang bests Bihan, General Shao, Shang Tsung, multiple of Shao's soldiers, a lot of Stone Army soldiers, Havoc, Darius, and even Bihan in a fair fight. Bihan did best him at his wedding, but the fact that he had to ambush the man's wedding to win is a testament to how far he had to go to get the tactical edge on his brother. Even then, his deception prompted Cyrax's defection, which led to their defeat. It also appears that Kuai-Liang lost to Bihan in his Noob Saibot form, but by this point, Bihan has essentially had to walk himself into torturing, mind-breaking, in death in order to get the tactical edge over his brother. He may be stronger as Noob Saibot, but he literally lost his soul to do so, something invaluable that Kuai-Liang was able to retain. Overall, Kuai-Liang is everything that his father wanted Bihan to be and more. And Bihan hates this about his brother. He's a mirror that shows Bihan his deepest insecurities and failures. This would explain why he seemed very adamant on having Kuai-Liang on his side, and when that failed, it explains why Bihan was so adamant on killing his brother.
What if I told you I could eliminate your brother?
I'm listening.
Your brother told me of all your weaknesses.
A short conversation, sorcerer.
To Bihan, it's more than killing his brother, it's about killing a version of himself that he could never be. It's essentially what he did to his father, and what he'd idealistically do to Kuai-Liang, who has bested him in every meaningful way from Bihan's perspective. Near-death experiences and how they change you. An important factor to consider in ascertaining Bihan's character is near-death experiences. These type of experiences can radically alter one's perspective of life. It can make you more present in the moment, more caring for others, goal-driven, less materialistic, and even more certain, confident. It's a direct confrontation of your mortality and the uncertainty of life itself. We all know that we're going to die one day, and we all know that our deaths are mostly out of our control and oftentimes unpredictable, but seldom do you find someone who really feels like they're going to die. For most, it's just something that happens to other people. Being confronted with your mortality is oftentimes a daunting, transient, and/or humbling experience. Take this one step further and think about the process of actually dying. Imagine that you could experience death and then ponder your experience as if you were still alive. Bihan has gone through this. He didn't just have a near-death experience. He was tortured, had a death experience, a corrupted resurrection, and a reversion to his prior mind in a different body. He literally lost himself to his tactless actions and has turned into a shell of his former self as a result. I can't even begin to fathom the trauma that Bihan went through or even truly understand what's going on in his mind. Based on his actions, it seems that he's become more certain and less up for debate. He acts as if he has no time and needs to get everything done his way urgently. It's like he's an amplification of his former self. He's no longer unsure about his remorse.
Your mother's death is regrettable.
I consider you complicit, Bihan.
Your suffering does not absolve you.
I was not aware I had sinned.
He doubles down on his hatred.
Expect no compassion, freak.
Such a cold heart, Subzero.
Your affliction is divine punishment.
Actually, it is fate's cruel joke. Melina should erase your kind, not protect it. Which one of us is the monster? No one is safe until... Your feelings have been made plain, Earthrealmer.
Do you hate being reptiloid? Is that why you mimic us?
It's to hide from warmbloods who hate me for being one.
You reptiloids shouldn't leave your caves.
Afraid, Bihan? Or just prejudiced?
If you die here, no one would notice.
Disdain, threats, and any kind of negative human phenomenon that could be experienced. He literally becomes the worst version of himself. Even more interestingly, Bihan hates himself. In his intros, he disapproves of, scoffs at, demeans, and is overall disgusted at what he's become.
I want no part of what you are. Are you as blind to opportunities as our brother? How can you stand being what you are?
Ask yourself the same question.
What you are is abominable. I thought so too, at first. I had hoped we would see eye to eye. It pleases me to disappoint you.
Even the noob version of himself thought he was abominable at first. Likely only coming to cope with himself after the power he realized he had after his defeat of Titan Havoc. In the fight leading up to Titan Havoc, Bihan literally kills himself from another timeline, as if he's really saying goodbye to his former self. He does so brutally with immense amounts of hatred. He does even worse to Kuai-Liang, likely representing his frustration at his brother for not acquiescing to his way of seeing things, and for being everything that Bihan was supposed to be, according to his father. All in all, Bihan likely hated himself even before becoming Noob Saibot. His actions disgraced the Lin Kuei, made his brothers estranged, got him outcasted from both Earthrealm and Outworld, led him to getting betrayed by General Shao and Reiko, had him on the verge of getting executed by Empress Melina, led to his torturing and eventual death and relegation to Chaos Realm, and eventually his entombment in the Temple of the Elements. When looking at these actions on the surface, it's hard to make a case that they're consistent with someone who loves themselves. Why else would he push everyone who really cared about him away, make allies with people that didn't respect him, surround himself with sycophants like Sektor, and put himself in a position where his death was almost guaranteed? Self-hate. He hates himself because he couldn't live up to the expectations of his father. He hates himself for not being able to show how skilled he is as a fighter. He hates himself for his subservience to Liu Kang. He hates himself for not being able to convince his brothers into his way of thinking. He hates himself for letting his father die. He hates himself for being bested by his younger brother in almost every conceivable way. He hates himself. All of his actions are in lieu of him not accepting what his actions say about his character, poorly reconciling his cognitive dissonance and avoiding the fact that the reason why he projects himself so highly to everyone else is because he feels so lowly about himself and feels the need to overcompensate at every opportunity he gets. He's always hiding behind his ambition to shield himself from the painful truth that is his self-hate. Hate that, when taken into account, recontextualizes his cartoonishly evil demeanor. Conclusion. Bihan is a tragic individual. His upbringing is sympathetic, as a lot of people can relate to having soul-crushing expectations that cause us to behave sporadically. Bihan's tragedy lies in the opportunity that was his father's death. Although he had initially thought that letting his father die would free him from his soul-crushing expectations, it would actually act as the catalyst that trapped him in said expectations in life and in death. He could have been a great leader and asset to his clan in Earthrealm, but his insecurities, poor interpersonal communication, deception, and self-hatred would essentially guarantee his ultimate regression into the worst version of himself. Thank you guys for watching. Please let me know in the comments what parts of my assessment you agree or disagree with, as I love hearing all of you guys' feedback. I understand that this character can be interpreted in many different ways and there's no one right answer, so leave a like if you like the video, leave a dislike if you dislike the video, and subscribe if you want to see more video essays dissecting these secretly nuanced characters.